After a very disappointing top 24 placing at COD Champs, many people were wondering if that was the last time we'd seen the King step on the stage. And even if he did, there were many questions. The two most prominent ones were, does he still have the passion to compete at the highest level? Or would he rather just go full-time content, something that he seems to truly enjoy? And more importantly, was he good enough to still win championships? Scump is arguably the greatest Call of Duty player of all time. He became the first player in Call of Duty history to win championships in 10 different titles, which that's probably a record that might never get broken. And we all know about Scump. He's had countless events where he's dropped a 1.2 KD. He has countless MVPs. When you think of individual dominance in Call of Duty, there's no other name that you think of besides Scump, but his longevity and consistency playing at the highest level could be overlooked. He's paved the way for new players inside and outside of the game, whether it be mimicking his playstyle inside the game or just falling in love with gaming content in general. Scump is truly generational. Being a part of the greatest Call of Duty dynasty to date, yeah, it's helped his success. But people don't realize that Scump has been winning for over a decade. Literally a decade, a record that honestly may never be broken. And early on in his career, when he necessarily wasn't on the best teams, he was dragging them along to a consistent placing, to a successful placing, kind of like how LeBron James was early in his career. And we all know that Scump is Call of Duty's biggest star, but I don't think he gets enough respect and praise for how dominant he truly was early on in his career. Because we see this talk every year. The GOAT talk. Who is the greatest Call of Duty player of all time? And when that question gets brought up, you hear names like Krim, you hear names like Karma, and maybe even Clay a little bit. Probably not Clay, but you know, for argument's sake. And I'll be honest, it's all fair because they all have something that Scump doesn't, which is success on the biggest stage, the biggest event every year, the Call of Duty championships. Every player wants to get at least one ring. But when we're talking about the GOATs, they have multiple. And Scump only has one. He's the second player ever to eclipse the 30 event win mark, but just one ring. And I mean, hell, even new superstar players like Simp and OAKBOYZ already have two. So the question is, does this hurt his chances at being considered the greatest of all time? Well, of course it does. But what would it take for the King to claim yet another title? When we're talking about the greats of Call of Duty, let's be honest, there's a lot of them. For their own reasons. I mean, hell, you're looking at one right now. But one of the things that I value the most, especially when it comes to talking about Scump, is the longevity and the consistency at playing at the highest level. Something that I think no player comes close to. Because we've seen it, and we're going to continue to see it. There's players that are dominant in certain games, you know, and they have a lot of success. And maybe they even get a ring in those games. But then they fall off for a year or two. Maybe they never climb back up to the top. Maybe they do, but they're just way too inconsistent. But not with Scump. I feel like he's been considered one of the best players in every single Call of Duty for a decade now. And with the way the game is nowadays, I do think Scump needs another ring to be considered the GOAT. You know, every year we have new, young superstars emerging, and just how the general fan base and the players view, like, who are the greatest players of all time? Who are the greats? You have to have more than one ring. I mean, hell, I don't have any, but if I had two, I'd be top 10 all time just because of that. And there's already a handful of players, both older and younger, that are above him in that regards, that have multiple rings. So I think it is something that he needs to do, but it's simple. I think if Scump can win a ring in Vanguard, maybe even a couple extra events, he will be able to take the place for the time being as the greatest Call of Duty player of all time. If Major 1 was any prediction for the rest of the year, then I'd say it's looking pretty bright for Scump in OpTic Texas. But there are a few things that I think are obstacles standing in the way for Scump becoming the greatest of all time. And I guess just OpTic Texas overall success this year. Because in the past couple years, it seemed like Scump hasn't really been enjoying competing as much as he has early on in his career, which is a fair take. He's been doing it for a long time. He hasn't seemed this passionate. And in recent years, it almost felt like the end was near for Scump's playing days. I mean, hell, even in the beginning of this season, when OpTic Texas had 2 round 11 losses, you saw Scump tweet, "There has to be the light at the end of this." And it wasn't a good tweet. Now, I know it probably got taken out of context, but when you see something like that from Call of Duty's superstar, their most popular player, one of the greatest of all time, you gotta wonder, is this it? Is this year gonna be the end of Scump? Especially if they don't have any success. But to me, something feels a little bit different about this team. This is the first time in his career where he is the only veteran, surrounded by a bunch of young superstar players. When you look at his past teams, he's been surrounded by some of the all-time greats. You look at Aches, you look at Krim, you look at Formal, you look at Karma. You know, the list goes on, but those guys have already built a successful career. They've already been considered some of the greatest players to ever do it. But not with this team. I mean, sure, you have a lot of promise in players like Shotzzy, Dashy, and Illy. But he's the vet. He's the guy that not only are these players leaning on, he's the guy that these players were looking up to probably early on in his career. So it's a whole new environment for him. And I think even if it was subconsciously, this changed his mentality a little bit moving forward. Because not only is he playing for his own legacy, he's helping these young players create their own legacies for themselves moving forward, even after he's done playing. I mean, unless he literally plays till he's 40, which he could. And I truly think that that has reignited his passion. I think he loves the fact that he is now that, I don't want to say old man, but that vet that has the experience, that has went through everything that these players are going to go through in their career. I think he loves it. I think it makes him feel young again in a way, you know, because he's helping these guys go through the obstacles, you know, the nature of the beast when it comes to competing. And I know I could be gassing it because it only has been one event in Vanguard. There's no saying that OpTic Texas will continue their dominant streak, but what if they do? And what if I'm right? What if he has found his love for the game again? I think that's terrifying for the rest of the league because Scump has been doing this for the most part when a lot of these players were literally in diapers or in elementary school. So it's insane that there's a chance we might see the second, or I guess at this point, third prime for the King. But overall, I'm glad that Scump was able to get another victory because there's just a piece in me that doesn't want to see him step back from the game. He's the biggest star Call of Duty's ever seen. And I don't know if I want to see him take a step back from competing because who knows how the COD community will react and who knows how Call of Duty will look if he retires. So I want him to have as much success to keep him as happy, as passionate, as interested in the game itself. And I think this just may be the team that does it for him. So what do you think? Do you think if Scump does win another ring in Vanguard, maybe a couple more events, does he claim the title as the greatest Call of Duty player of all time?